Hi everyone, I'm Anita Caslina and I'm here at Beyond Pick Studios, and I'm lucky enough today to have an opportunity to interview David Eugene Perry, the author of the brand new critically acclaimed novel Upon This Rock. And David, you and I know because I've told you that I absolutely love mystery novels. I have read them since I was a kid, like with Nancy Drew and those. I just kept going and going. When I saw this book, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to read it. And I have to confess, I'm only about a quarter of the way through, but that means I don't have any spoilers that I could tell the audience. Anyway, thank you. Welcome. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And I know that your background is Italian. And of course, my novel Upon This Rock is set in the beautiful Umbrian hilltop town of Orvieto, Italy. So I'm not going to spoil it for you because you got a lot more of the book to go. And I think you'll like it. I'm
sure I will. I'm sure I will. And give us a little background about this. What made you start thinking about this story, or how did you end up in Orvieto? I'm not saying it correctly. Orvieto.
You've got it perfectly right.
I needed to channel my inner Italian, my roots. So how did you get started with this? What made you think about going to Italy in the first place, and how did you find the story?
Well, in 2014, my husband Alfredo and I lost our 4 best friends in a very short period of time, less than a year.
Wow.
And we knew we needed a break. So we turned over our public relations and design business to a colleague. And just serendipitously, a friend who lived in Orvieto emailed me and said, do you know anyone who would like to do a house swap? We want a place in San Francisco. We have an apartment in Orvieto. I said, us. And they said, well, don't you want to know about Orvieto? I was like, no, it sounds great. Small town, Italy, we're in. And we went, and the first day we arrived, we discovered that it was the 4-year anniversary of the suicide of a beloved deacon in Orvieto. And 4 years after that, the town was still talking about it, and I became obsessed with the story. And the more I dug into the story, the more I found out about this real person, Lucas Sedeta, but also the incredible history of Orvieto, which includes the Etruscan era, the Roman era, an incredible World War II history, and of course a deep history about the papacy and the Vatican during the Renaissance. And all of that came together one day, and the idea for the novel dropped into my brain, and the result is in your hand.
Well, it's pretty amazing. So this deacon, he was absolutely beloved, or 4 years later, they wouldn't have still been mourning him, correct?
Yes, he was incredibly well loved. I've seen pictures of him. Alfredo and I actually found his grave in southern Italy. And even though the novel is fiction, it's completely fiction, Lucas Sedeta's life is just the stepping off point for this fictional book, which is really about redemption and refugees. Everyone in the novel is a refugee in some way. In the present day, Lee and Adriano, the young couple from San Francisco, are refugees from the death of their friend. Pope Clement VII, who comes into the novel in backstory 500 years earlier than the present.
From the sack. He had to leave Rome because Rome had been sacked. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct. And actually, Pope Clement was in Orvieto when the ambassadors from London came asking him for a divorce from,
Henry VIII.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in a very real way, Orvieto, Upon This Rock, it is a rock in the middle of Umbria, is the setting for the schism between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformation. And I found this tale fascinating. And I wrote the first 70% of the book in the first 4 months there, and then over the next 2 years finished it, completed it in 2018, got a contract with Linden Press in Fresno, California, a small publishing house, and then the beginning of this year started getting the reviews. I was most happy because Armistead Maupin, known for Tales of the City, called it an elegant, twisty thriller. It will do for Orvieto what Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil did for Savannah. So it's been very well reviewed. Knock wood, that'll continue.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And what I loved is that as you describe that town of Orvieto, I felt like I was there. You're a very descriptive writer, I have to say. I know you've worked in public relations and that type of writing for many years, but this is a different style of writing. What drew you to this? This is your first novel, right?
It is. Back in the mid-1980s, during the worst of the AIDS, HIV era, I started a novel, And I think, like a lot of gay men during that period, it was hard to escape that pandemic. And I never finished it. I think, in a way, I felt that if I finished it, I myself would die from AIDS, HIV. So it's been in a drawer. And now that we are here in another pandemic, I think maybe that character will finish that novel 40 years in the future. For me, writing fiction has been something I always wanted to do. And I knew that I was going to write in Orvieto, having 4 months for the first time in many years free to do some creative writing. But I didn't have any idea I would write a novel. I certainly didn't think I would write a murder mystery thriller, although I love the novels of P.D. James. And I think, in a way, she's been my mentor, because she didn't start writing until she was
much older, right?
Much older. So
Yeah,
her
yeah.
wisdom helped her novels. Hopefully my wisdom will help them.
Yeah. Well, you know, and as I follow just the part of the book that I've gotten through so far, we have the characters of Lee and Adriano. And who do they remind me of?
Some people have said that Lee and Adriano are younger versions of me and my husband.
That's what I
Alfredo.
thought, yes.
Well, everyone in the book is a complete character from my brain. But as Armistead Maupin once said, every character I write has a part of me. So the nonagenarian woman in Upon This Rock, La Donna Volsini. There's a lot of my humor in there, but also some of my grandmother. But the characters in the novel also do bear resemblance to the people that we experienced in Orvieto during our time there. And we've gone back several times, and knock wood, hopefully in November of this year, we will be in Orvieto to help launch my book there.
Oh, how wonderful. That's the plan. I heard through the grapevine that you were going to be flying back to Italy, and that's part of the plan, is to launch the book there in Orvieto, correct?
Yes. And then hopefully to be in Rome for a little bit of it. There's a place called the Hotel Minerva that overlooks a beautiful church where the two Medici popes, Leo X and Clement VII, are buried. And those two popes, in backstory, have a real role to play in the plot of Upon This Rock. But it is a mystery. At the beginning of the book, you hear about the suicide of this character, Deacon Andrea.
Right.
And through the course of the book, you find that everyone in some way, besides being a refugee, felt responsible for what happened to him. And it is a mystery, so I'm not going to tell you what happened. By the end of the book, you learn a lot about Deacon Andrea, but also about Orvieto. Someone said to me that Orvieto isn't a place in the novel, it's a character. It's a very rich town, and you know, with your Italian heritage, the love of history just imbues everything there.
The love of history and the respect for history as well. Yeah, no, it's just, you know, like I say, you brought it to life. I'd like to talk a little bit about this concept of refugees, because this is very much alive right now, and I feel that during this pandemic, many more people have literally become refugees. They have had to leave their cities to go someplace because things have closed down. What is it about Orvieto that draws that kind of people to it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I did a book reading the other day for a book club, and they were fascinated and moved by that. When we were in Orvieto in 2014, the refugee crisis was front and center. Every day you were reading in the paper, seeing on TV, hundreds of people trying to make the dangerous crossing from Africa and war-torn Libya to the beaches of Italy. And you saw it on the streets of Orvieto, people not begging but selling things. And I realized that even though the focus of this novel was a mystery about this character, Luca, or Andrea rather, I couldn't tell this story without talking about what was going on in Orvieto at that point. And as you know, the refugee crisis continues across the world, still in Italy, and now COVID-19 has only made a bad situation worse. So I'm hoping that people enjoy this book. It's a fun read, but I hope they take away from it a bit of compassion. Each of the characters has a real cross to bear, to use a Catholic analogy, and a lot of guilt. But each of them comes out of it, I think, better, more compassionate, and better suited to face what lies ahead.
Absolutely. And there's a lot about Catholicism. What I like is the play between the two characters. One is very, I wouldn't say devout, but he has great respect for tradition. And his husband rolls his eyes frequently about the Catholic Church. Does that match your relationship with your husband?
Well, I would say I was taught by Benedictine nuns and Benedictine monks in Catholic school.
I suspected as much.
And at one point, I seriously did consider the priesthood, even more than the priesthood, to join a monastery. And my husband, Alfredo, raised in Catholic Spain, has a very different understanding of Catholicism. So yes, in our real-day relationship, he would be more quote-unquote anti-church. I wouldn't say I'm pro-church, but I'm fascinated by the history.
Yeah.
So the dialogue and the conflict between Lee and Adriano is something that I'm well aware of in real time.
I wondered, and I noticed that Adriano does some cooking too, which I happen to know Alfredo does quite a lot of. So, so after you go to Orvieto, what's the plan? So far, the book has been selling beautifully. I mean, you had more pre-sales than almost anyone with a novel.
Yes, knock wood. I've done public relations and promotion for authors during my 36-year career, but I've never worked on it for my own. Of course, my publisher, I'm very blessed with to have someone who's helping promote it. Fenton Johnson, a Guggenheim Fellow, called it the gay DaVinci Code, but a lot better. Locally, the Nob Hill Gazette
That's
called
saying
it
something,
yes,
isn't it?
It called it a sexy historical thriller. So the reviews have been really good, and more importantly, I'm hearing from readers who are touched by the story.
Yeah.
I love mysteries, but I like a mystery that is also enjoyable to read. I hope the characters of Lee and Adriano aren't off-putting. I hope that they're the sort of people you would welcome in, but also the people like La Donna Volsini, Grigori, the Swiss Guard, Bishop Arnaud, who is kind of a difficult character in the book, but also Reverend Vicky, a female Anglican priest. And then the backstory, throughout the entire novel, what is very much on a shelf for Lee and Adriano are the ashes of their very best friend who died, the Reverend Brian Swarthmore. And those ashes are carried through the book, and at the end of the novel, they are spread out over the sea in Ireland. So the novel is 95% in Orvieto, a little bit in Cività de Bagnoregio, and a bit in Rome. So you've got 2 countries and 4 towns.
And it's very humane. It's a humanitarian story, as you say, besides a mystery. Well, I wish you the very best of luck. This is so exciting, and bon voyage. I mean, this is a beautiful thing to be able to actually go to that town. Those people are going to be so proud, you know, it's really important for them to have their little town, you know, lifted up in this way through a novel. So thanks so much for coming and being with us today, David, and I look forward to following, and I want to see the next novel too.
I do appreciate it. Before we close, I just want to say I'm very excited to be in Orvieto. Like so many towns in Italy, well, all over the world, they have suffered greatly from COVID, and tourism is just not what it was. So I'm really hoping that my book will be welcomed in Orvieto, and my wish is, I've been told it's a very cinematic book, that it will be made into a movie or a series and filmed in Orvieto. Nothing would make me happy.
I'm going to hold that with you, okay? I think that sounds fabulous. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you, Anita. Ciao.
Ciao.